Hello again, everybody. I'm Roger Hoover. Glad to welcome you back to the Crimson Tide Sports Network, and welcome to Crimson Drive, presented to you by Coca-Cola. Hope everyone's doing well, as again, University of Alabama Athletics. The full school year of athletics has come to a close, but we have some really exciting news to share with you, not only about Alabama men's basketball, we'll take a look at the baseball program, and then we'll have some football conversation as well, as we have another edition of Crimson Drive, presented to you by Coca-Cola. Let's take a look at what's coming up on the show this afternoon. We will start with Crimson Tide baseball. Matt Reida will be our guest. He was just hired as Alabama's assistant coach for baseball. He had been on the staff a couple years ago as the volunteer assistant. He'll explain what that means in a moment. Now he's back in a full-time role on Brad Bohannon's staff. And then I mentioned we'll have some football conversation with Tim Brando of Fox Sports, not only talking about the Nick Saban contract extension, the possibility of a 12-team playoff, and also name, image, and likeness and what it may mean, not only for Alabama, but for all of college football. Taking a look at the headlines, Alabama men's basketball, some really good news earlier in the week. They will face Baylor in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. Baylor, of course, won the national championship this past year, and that game will be in Tuscaloosa at Coleman Coliseum, January 29th, 2022. Again, part of the Big 12 SEC Challenge. We are thrilled for that matchup between the Baylor Bears and the Alabama Crimson Tide, as Alabama potentially could be facing three of the Final Four teams from last year. The schedule's still getting worked out, not official just yet, but it's looking like a very strong non-conference slate to go for the reigning SEC champion, Alabama Crimson Tide. Then some other news around Alabama athletics. Congratulations to Justin Thomas, men's golf alum. He has been named to the U.S. Olympic squad. He becomes the first former Alabama golfer to be named to the U.S. Olympic squad. So we look forward to seeing Justin Thomas in the Olympics, and then so many Olympians in swimming and diving, also track and field, all getting named to various Olympic squads, not only for the United States, but for other countries as well. Make sure you head to RolledTide.com for full coverage and a full list of all the Alabama Olympians coming up in the Tokyo Games, and hopefully we'll have one of those Olympians coming on the show next week, possibly a conversation with Ryan White, who kind of captured everybody's attention last week with her great performances in swimming and diving. Great performances as well by Benedetta Moresco, women's golfer for the University of Alabama. She won the Italian Stroke Play Championship, essentially the national championship of golf, women's golf in Italy. She won that. She was the 2021 SEC Freshman of the Year. Now she continues playing really well this summer, so congratulations to Benedetta Moresco. Also, do want to note that in baseball, Tyler Ross finished as a finalist for the ABCA Rawlings Gold Glove. Really no surprise. Tyler Ross, former position player, a two-way player, turned to pitching full-time this year, defended his position really well. Great honor for Alabama baseball's Tyler Ross. And today our interviews will start with Alabama baseball, talking with Matt Reida, who everybody really enjoyed getting to know in the 2019 and 2020 seasons when he was on the Alabama baseball staff as a volunteer assistant. He went away for 1 year to Pitt. Now he's back on the staff as the hitting coach and one of the full-time assistants for the Crimson Tide. So it's great to catch up again with one of our good friends, Matt Reida. Matt, first of all, how great does it feel to wear Alabama Crimson once again?
Oh, it feels great to put the A back on and wear Alabama across your chest. It makes me really proud, and really happy to be here.
Well, a couple of years for you on Brad Bohannon's staff as a volunteer assistant. You spent last year on the staff at Pittsburgh. Just first of all, what was your year like away from Alabama after spending so much time here?
You know, it was a really good experience for me. One, being around Pitt and being around great people, starting with the top. Mike Bell, the head coach there, he's an unbelievable person with a track record second to none. So I was really fortunate to learn from him and be around those guys up there. So it was a unique experience being in the ACC for the first time. So I've kind of knocked out the Big Ten, the Big East, SEC, now the ACC, and to see what that league looks like and compare it now for this job, I think is a really valuable experience for me.
And I'm sure as well, just gaining more and more connections. I mean, you've been coaching for quite a while now, but anytime you get to go to a different part of the country, keep meeting more high school baseball coaches, that has to help for what you're doing now at Alabama.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I've been in covered a couple different regions now, and Pitt was a unique job because we had a lot of junior college players, and we had a lot of players from the Northeast. Areas that I hadn't covered in the past. And that was one thing that was a really good, valuable experience for me to get outside my own network and own comfort zone a little bit. So.
And now you get to come back to Alabama. Just first of all, what stands out to you about the couple of years you served on Coach Bohannon's staff as a volunteer assistant here?
Well, I think Alabama, it's, from a brand and from a national standpoint, it's funny. Even living in Pittsburgh, it doesn't take you long driving down the road before you see the Alabama A on the back of somebody's car or somebody's shirt. And, you wear a t-shirt and somebody says Roll Tide. And that's one thing that's really neat about being here specifically. But, I think being back with Coach Bo, I've known him since I was 16, so it's one of those things where he recruited me, and then to go out and be able to recruit for him, and I kind of know exactly what he wants and what he's looking for, and how he wants things done in his program. So I think it's going to be a really good fit coming back for him.
And then for you as well, not with the Tide last year, but you had to be watching some of the games, keeping up with how Alabama did. Tremendously proud of the steps forward this program took this past spring.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, over the last 3 or 4 years, as the program's kind of gotten rebuilt in some ways, to finally kind of see them take that next jump and go to Hoover and go to a regional. Obviously, last year's COVID year, I felt like we were headed that way and didn't get to see kind of the end of it. So then I left, and it was a little bitter watching, this season, then kind of take that next jump forward and not being a part of it. But to just watch it from afar, I was really proud, really happy for those kids, because they, have really worked to earn that.
And now coming back to Alabama, recruiting such a big part of the job for you. And we're not going to ask about any specific players or anything like that, but just what are some of the next steps for you getting back on the road after last year at Pitt? I assume everything you were doing recruiting wise is like this over Zoom.
Yeah, to be back on the road and be face to face with kids and people and building that relationship part of it. And I think that's one thing that we do a great job here of, is building that relationship piece. So when you can get down, and it's one thing to do a Zoom, it's one thing to do a phone call, but to get face to face with players again and really connect with them and be able to get them on campus and everything like that, that's a whole different dynamic. And I think that's kind of what we're strong suited for. So I'm really excited to get back out and get on the road and hopefully find some future Tide.
And then when you get the players to Tuscaloosa, you got to love being able to take them around Sewell Thomas Stadium, not just the stadium, but the hitting cages. I mean, everything that's in place for you guys seems to be there.
We have an unbelievable place, and there's no doubt about that. I think, our success rate, I don't know the exact number, but when we can get them to campus and we can get them into our facilities and around campus and around our people, more so than anything. So I think, you look around our league, there's other places that have nice places and nice buildings, but the support staff around our program is second to none. Our fan base is unbelievable, and the people around the program are all great people. So I think that's what really attracts recruits to the University of Alabama, and we hope to get as many of them here as we can.
Kind of along those lines, when you are meeting with the future Tide players, hopefully, what is your main recruiting pitch you guys are selling right now?
Well, I think it's you can do anything that you ever want to do from an amateur baseball standpoint at Alabama, and it's been done. The program's been to Omaha several times. We have several big leaguers. We have first rounders. You have Golden Spike winner. So everything that you want to be done, you can do here. And you're in a situation now where it used to be, hey, we're coming, and now it's more, hey, look, there's this guy, there's that guy, there's we were in regional last year, all those types of things. So I think it definitely helps moving forward as you continue to have success and continue winning, because we want guys that want to win. So they're attracted to those types of things.
Part of your job now, of course, with as an assistant coach, is being the hitting coach really for Crimson Tide baseball. Just how has hitting in the college game changed since you played at Kentucky in the earlier part of the last decade?
When I was playing at Kentucky, they had just introduced the BB core bat, and they still had the old balls where they were very high seam balls. So you used to see it like 2-1 games, 3-2 games all the time. I'm watching these College World Series games, and guys are hitting home runs regularly. They weren't doing that in Omaha a few years ago. They weren't doing that in the regionals or in some of these parks a few years ago, where now the game's changed back a little bit. Obviously from a power standpoint, that's become important. But the good thing about me and Coach Bohannon have been together, long enough that I think we're going to mesh really well with what we expect from an offense. And, I think we're going to really dive in and teach some of the finer points of offense and, base run hunting and stealing and things that we feel like we've been missing a little bit up to this point, really just diving in and making sure our kids grasp some different concepts at a really more in-depth level.
I'm sure there's a lot you're excited about coming up with the rest of this summer and this fall, but you got to be excited as well about fall baseball and the chance to continue learning using that time on the field kind of as a laboratory at that time of the year.
Yeah, there's different stages are for different things, and one thing, our guys all like to play, and they're all out playing this summer. And I think one thing about being a good baseball player is you need to play the game as much as you can, and that's one thing that a lot of these kids have missed out on over the last year and a half or whenever since the pandemic has started. They just haven't played a lot of baseball, especially the younger players. And I think you even saw with Alabama's team this year, a lot of the position players were young. So I think those at bats in league for the first time around are invaluable. You just you can't replace experience, and that's the one thing I feel like going into next year we're going to start having some guys that have been through the league and know what it looks like and have seen the stuff, and I feel like your second year around the league, especially, you just kind of relax a little bit. The game slows down for you a little bit. And that's one thing that's important as these guys get at bats in the summer. And then, like you said, there in the fall, that's a really big learning piece where you can really dive in and make mistakes and fail. And it's a lot easier for them to do because you're not broadcasting it. It's not going to be on Twitter and all that type of stuff. So kids are a little more open to making changes and trying different things as well.
Well, and the hitters get to go up against JJ's pitchers. And speaking of development, I mean, just you had to love seeing some of the results by guys like Dylan Smith or Chase Lee or Tyler Ross, what they were able to do from the time you saw them before. I mean, they were different pitchers, it seemed like last year.
Absolutely. I just saw Antoine, finishing up some stuff yesterday, and just to see the bodies, just the 140-pound Antoine, whatever he was, to seeing him, whatever he is at yesterday, he looks like a whole different person. And you can go across the board and say that about a lot of those kids. But yeah, you hit it there. Those pitchers, they were different guys. Tyler Ross was a completely different pitcher. Dylan Smith from his freshman year is unbelievably different. And those guys end up having a lot of success. So obviously there are a lot of injuries along the way, things that you can't out of your control. But I think a huge step forward, and JJ does a great job with the pitcher. So I look forward to kind of cracking him a little bit in the fall and having that competitive environment. So that's good for the hitters.
Certainly is. Well, Matt, we're certainly glad you're back on Alabama's staff now as a full-time assistant coach. And before I let you go, the volunteer assistant position that you had before, for some fans of other sports who may not be as familiar with what that means in baseball, what can you tell us about that? And what do you kind of hope the future is for that position overall in the college game?
Sure. So the way the college baseball breaks down is you have your head coach and you have your two assistant coaches that are full-time. That next position is a volunteer coach, meaning they can't get paid through the university. Typically, they get paid through doing camps or lessons and all that, which makes it a difficult situation a lot of times. And that's kind of one thing that makes it hard to get into the college game for a lot of college coaches. Getting that first job where you're kind of having to get by and support yourself, it almost takes a very unique individual that doesn't need rely on income and everything else. So that makes it difficult. Hopefully in the next few years, I think especially you watch this College World Series and you look at the fans and the people that support it, and you look at these regionals, the super regionals, all these people that love college baseball. Hopefully in the next coming years, they look at that and know that we need additional support. When you're talking about 35 players, you want to give them everything that they can have from a resource standpoint. I think an extra person, extra member of staff is really important, because you see those guys, or guys like me, have used those positions to really springboard themselves into college baseball. So I was really fortunate getting the volunteer position here. I left a recruiting coordinator position to do that, to kind of get my foot in the SEC, and it worked out for me in the long run. But those positions are really, really valuable.
They certainly are. And you mentioned that camps play a big role in that. What can you tell us about the camps that are coming up at Sultana Stadium this summer?
Yeah, so we got a little bit of everything. We got we'll have a couple of prospect camps going forward. We'll have youth baseball camps. It's a really neat experience. I think kids that like playing the game and need to get them out of the house for a few days, give them something to do. I think kids will really enjoy it. Make it fun for them to play a lot. We'll break out the sprinkler system and do the sliding on the tarp, all that type of stuff. That's the kids' favorite, of course. But yeah, there will be several different camps. I think at www.alabamabaseballcamps.com. Get on there and help out. Not only good time for your kids, but help support the program as well.
Well, Matt, we're excited to have you back in Tuscaloosa now full-time as an assistant coach for the Crimson Tide. We hate that you missed out on all the fun of the SEC tournament and the regional this spring, but next year we got a lot more of that in store. So just thanks again and roll tide.
Hey, roll tide. Thank you for having me.
Future is really bright for Alabama baseball. Great to have Matt Reida now returning to Brad Bohannon staff. And make sure you go online to alabamabaseballcamps.com. Check out camp information to send your youngest children to Tuscaloosa coming up this summer for some Alabama baseball camp. Should be a lot of fun at the Joe. It's always a lot of fun when we talk college football and kind of everything in the wide world of sports that's going on with Fox Sports' Tim Brando. Always an entertaining conversation, and as always, he always has a lot of strong opinions. Some people on Twitter are kind of finding that out with a portion of the interview we released earlier, but now here's the full interview with Fox Sports' Tim Brando. Joined now by Tim Brando of Fox Sports, one of our dear friends here on the network from Chateau Brando, where they're getting excited because Tim has been named an inductee to the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. Congratulations, Timmy B.
Yeah, and Roger, I should say right off the top, I want to thank Nick Saban for opting out. He used recruiting, as his opt-out of my class, but I know that really he was more concerned about being overshadowed by Kent Lowe from LSU, the longtime sports information director, the beloved Special K Kent Lowe. He knew that he would just have been in his shadow had he accepted this year. So we appreciate, I'm speaking for Kent now, thank you for Nick, but he'll be in, I think he's coming in next year at 22. We're actually the class of 20 and we waited, 18 months. We had this thing scheduled 2 different times. And I'm just glad that in typical Louisiana form, our brain trust decided not to do it virtually. It was like, we're going to get the full treatment. And I think what they're doing is we're having the 2020 class go in this weekend, and the 2021 class will go in the last weekend in August before college football starts. So they'll get up to speed that way. And it's just so festive. Natchitoches is a great town. It's like a little New Orleans, really. And it's got a river running right through the city. The movie Steel Magnolias was filmed there. And the location of the museum is right there where you remember the last scenes of that movie with Olympia Dukakis and Julia Roberts and Shirley MacLaine, all that. So, the whole family's coming. I'll have the kids, grandkids, and a lot of friends, a lot of associates, and it's quite a big deal. I'm really thrilled.
You've already stolen my thunder already in this interview because I was going to ask about Kent Lowe overshadowing you in this process, but now you talk about him outshadowing Coach Saban.
I beat you to the line, huh?
You sure did. Well, that's really a great honor, Timmy B, and we're certainly thrilled for you as we're starting to get back to normal in a lot of ways. You mentioned this Hall of Fame induction will not be held virtually. It will be done in person. And just what a different conversation we're having about college football in 2021 in the summer versus what we had last year when you and I talked around this time.
Yeah, it's not about will we play or won't we play. It's about, oh, my God, what's going to happen in the next few years, right? Oh, my God, did you see this? And are we really going to do this? And the slam dunking of the NCAA by the justices and the Supreme Court, what that means for the NIL in the future. And I think it's a myriad of topics, obviously. It almost does seem that the football is secondary a little bit again, but it'll become primary in the next, 6 to 8 weeks. We'll get football back in the front burner as opposed to all the ancillary things that are taking place on the periphery, but it's a lot. I mean, there's a lot going on, and I think a lot of fans are having some difficulty wrapping their arms or their minds around all of it, because it seems to be moving so fast, and disseminating information that's that fast moving has a lot of people, I think, confused in many respects. College football is going to be in much better shape. I think that's the main thing. And I think fans need to understand that change was inevitable.
And with name, image, and likeness, are the changes going to be more subtle in the upcoming years, or is it going to be a really dramatic shift for those high-profile players like we've seen in recent years? Trevor Lawrence, Tua Tagovailoa, are those the main guys this benefits, or could we see some big changes across the board?
I think it's going to be more subtle than people really realize. Look, those guys, the major hitters that you're talking about, there could be some blockbuster opportunities for them, yes. But listen, this hasn't been enacted just yet. And my guess is there's going to be a way, I don't know how, I'm not smart enough to know how just yet, to handle it, to monitor it, to keep it from getting too out of whack. I know a lot of schools are prepared for it. Schools were prepared long before the NCAA ever thought about being prepared. There are some private companies that were hired by the institutions themselves to prepare them for all of this. And I think after July 1, a little bit more of this will become more clear to the players. And there are going to be opportunities for them, but they're not going to be necessarily the kind of opportunities that I think the stereotypes would suggest. By example, I joined, and Roger, I don't know, you may have done this yourself. I know some people working in local regions of the country that are in my business, working either regionally or locally, that have already joined Cameo, by example. I joined about a month ago, and you know, if somebody wants me to say Happy Father's Day and Happy Birthday to this guy or that guy, and here's what he did when he was in high school, and say something nice, or call one of his touchdowns from 1967 in a Keith Jackson voice, I'll do that. And it'll take maybe 5 minutes of my time, and I get to monetize that. You know, I $49.99. You want me to do that for you? Ring me up. I'll do it. And it doesn't hurt anybody, you know, but it does take some of my time, and time is worth something. Okay. Whether it's Roger Hoover or Tim Brando, it takes time is money. Okay. In today's world. So if we can do that, then why can't an offensive tackle or a tight end or a linebacker, you know, in Tuscaloosa? There'll be a lot of that takes place. I've been on golf courses before, you know, and the guys in my group would say, "Hey Tim, I just love it when you say the iron unkind. Can you leave a phone message with iron unkind on it?" You know, and I would do it for them. But that's essentially what Cameo is. Now somebody asks me to do that, I get paid to do it. And it doesn't really hurt anyone. If that person wants it badly enough, then it's no big deal. I think there'll be quite a bit of that for all of the athletes. I think a lot of women, frankly, that's a very loyal audience. You know what the softball team accomplished this past year, and their fan base is loyal, and it's growing. And let's say this owner of a business in T-Town wants to get, you know, that pitcher that was striking out everybody to do a little ad for them in Tuscaloosa. It doesn't hurt anybody. So, and I don't think it means that suddenly we're losing amateurism as we know it in intercollegiate athletics. So I think there'll be quite a bit of that. As it relates to the big end, the high end of this, once we get the video games going again, and we see what happens with EA Sports and all that, could take it to another stratosphere. But by the time we get that far down the road, I really believe we'll have a way of monitoring it and basically making sure that the players themselves, while they're being taken care of, it's not so out of whack that there are petty jealousies and that kind of thing that exist in the locker room. I think that's the byproduct of a stereotype that a lot of people have about college athletics now. And I just think it's off base. And by the way, if some on the team are a little concerned that the Tua Tagovailoa 2.0s, all right, that come into Alabama are making more than they are, this just in the pros, there are going to be people making more than you make. You know, life is not always fair. I've made a great career for myself. Okay, I'm going into the Hall of Fame in Louisiana. All right, but you know, I didn't do quite as well as Joe Buck or Jim Nance. And at Fox, I'm doing great games. But Gus Johnson is doing the top game that we have. So, and I'm fine with that. Okay, we have to understand that in the performance business, whether it's athletics or broadcasting, okay, some people you'll make more than, and other people will make more than you. So, listen, in college is about life, and this is a teaching moment, I think, in a lot of respects. Why not teach these young men and women while they're in college, you know, what their relative worth may be, you know, and if someone else is making more than you're making, there's a reason that person is making more than you are.
Well, that was really the conversation. Name, image, and likeness in the early part of the summer. Just as May came to a close, we got into June. Then we hear the news that the college football playoff is looking at expanding from 4 teams like we have right now to possibly 12 coming up. Just what was your reaction to the news? Did you figure maybe we'd try 8 for a little bit, or were you surprised to hear we did have 12?
Well, I'm pretty sure you knew I was happy, right? I mean,
yeah, we've had a lot of talks about this before.
Yeah, I was astounded that they went with more than 8. And sometimes I guess a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. I always thought that the world of college athletics, one of its pitfalls was that change was always done in a reactionary mode, never in a proactive mode. We have to do this. Okay, we'll do it now. Okay. The 2 to 4 thing happened after the debacle, and I know Alabama fans don't like hearing it, but that god awful rematch between LSU and Alabama was a snooze fest. It got a poor rating, and nobody wanted to see 2 SEC teams playing for the national championship. All right, at that particular time. Now the Georgia Alabama thing was different because they each had to win to get there, so you really can't compare the two. When it was 2 teams selected. Okay, neither LSU or Bama beat anybody in another bowl game to get to that game. They were playing again after the game of the century, which was also a snooze fest, won in Tuscaloosa by LSU. But the smoke-filled rooms in New Orleans that night were such that it was amazing how quickly Bill Hancock's no playoff, can't even say the word playoff door in his Grapevine, Texas office got changed to the college football playoff office. I mean, within a week, they got that thing done. Well, that happens from time to time when you have seminal moments take place, and that was one of them back in 2011. I think what they noticed after that game, when they went to 4, was that it looked good. We had a lot of juice early. The controversy over TCU and Baylor and Ohio State sliding into the 4 hole, but then coming up with a championship and winning it against Oregon that year, blew people away. And it was kind of, oh, well, this has got some juice to it. Well, we move forward and we see over and over and over again the same teams getting in. And the Who's In promotion was a bust. We already know who's in. If I can tell you in June, the 4 or 5 teams that are going to be there, then why are we bothering with the Who's In promotion? Those Tuesday night gatherings on ESPN with Reese Davis and said spokesperson for the college football playoff were just a yawn fest. We knew what questions were coming. We knew what canned responses would come. And we had, between Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and Oklahoma, 22 of 28 invites between those teams. So there was no, this was not reaching out and saying it's a playoff. It was becoming a pure playoff privilege invitational. Okay, you got the big name, you got the best personnel, you're going to be there. And if you stub your toe once, you're still okay if you are those teams. You know, if TCU and Baylor had been Oklahoma or Texas in 2014, I dare say Ohio State would not have gotten in. They didn't have the same brand as either Oklahoma or Texas. So it was made easy to put Ohio State in. And you know, and fans, college football fans are smart enough to realize all this. So they tuned out. Roger, the other thing that happened that I think surprised me, and I know it really got into the heads of the commissioners of the conferences. When Alabama played Ohio State this past year, now granted, it was COVID. It was kind of a one-off year. Everyone lost money. Some lost more than others. But I think they all felt like going into this year's championship game this past year, oh my God, we finally got it. Dream matchup. Ohio State, Alabama. Columbus is the highest rated and has more households that love college football than any other school in the Big Ten. Birmingham, Alabama is the #1 rated sport college football town in America. You get more households for college football in Birmingham than any other town in America. So you had really like the Cowboys and the New England Patriots playing here. I mean, that would have been they are the comparable teams in the NFL. The Cowboys and Patriots would be Alabama and Ohio State college football. The rating was 25% lower than it had been the year before. Now that is, I mean, that was shocking. And I think it really, and it wasn't just COVID. You know, you could blame some of it on COVID, but not with those two marquee teams. And I think that rattled the chains of a lot of people, to go along with the fact that there were millions of dollars being lost from COVID. And with that in mind, they decided, you know, we really have to implement and move this thing along. What I didn't know was that they had started as far back as they did with those 4 guys that were in charge of putting together a plan. And, you know, kudos to them. But Mike Slive, as great as he was as a commissioner, he was a dear friend. We all miss him. And Jim Delaney, who was, I think, as powerful, if not more powerful than Mike when he was the commissioner of the Big Ten, I don't believe that this would have happened this quickly if either of them were in their positions as commissioners. I'm not sure it would have, because Delaney would have wanted to protect the Rose Bowl and the Big Ten situation. And I think Mike would have been really a little hard-headed about, well, hey, for the SEC, I think we're doing just fine. Why do we want to change any of this? And, you know, Sankey said all those things publicly. He was just chirping exactly what Mike Slive's handbook said, but he did a 180 on this. And I think the reason he did the 180 was because he was smart enough to see big picture here by opening it up to 12, not 8, but 12. You could not only guarantee a group of 5 team its opportunity with just saying 6 conference champions are automatically in. We're going to get the best, highest rated 6 conference champions. Okay. So that'll guarantee you 1. If you go to 12, okay, maybe there is another UCF or Memphis or Coastal Carolina to go along with the Cincinnati. Okay. But the better chance is the SEC could get 3, maybe 4. The Big Ten could get 2, maybe 3. So the big boys were going to get even more revenue to come in. And that's the bottom line. Once they did the balance sheet financially to find out worth for the networks, what it would be worth to have 11 games instead of 3 games. You know, you're talking about 8 more games. You're talking about, you know, a lot of inventory. And then they saw from an ad sales standpoint what that would be worth. They went, oh my God, you know, we're sharing $660 million versus 1.9 to $2 billion. We can't let that slip. We got to, and who knows what the framework of network television might be if you wait until 2025. Better to get your money now if it's available versus later if it's not as available. So I really suspect this thing will be done and implement it by 2023. And it's going to be really interesting to see how this works out from a television standpoint, because I think that thing could be really, really fun to watch. And I realize there are probably a lot of people out there saying, well, Brando, we know who you work for. And yeah, I'll admit that it wouldn't hurt my feelings at all if Fox got involved in this. But at the same time, Roger, if it does happen that ESPN pulls the trigger, and right now they own the rights, the ball's in their court. If they do pull the trigger, I'll give them a round of applause and say, fellas, go get you some. I just think the economics of this are such that the potential, okay, my considered opinion is the potential of a multi-network deal done to get that revenue up where it needs to be for the benefit of everybody involved. The potential of that is very good. And, following the NFL model and having multiple networks involved, it certainly worked out well for them. I think that college football could, from a business point of view, could learn a lot from that.
Well, you call games on Fox Sports, you call a lot of games in the Pac-12. Can a 12-team playoff revitalize that conference, or is it still going to be tough to get to the final matchup of the year in this new model for them?
Well, they got to get better. I mean, the Pac-12 is behind the American right now in terms of its quality of play and its depth of good teams. They've got to get better. Right now, I would say Oregon is probably the bell cow of the Pac-12. I would have said Arizona State is next, but see what's going on there. God knows what's going to happen with Herm Edwards' team now. Pac-12's got a lot of work to do. But I do think that a representative from the Pac-12 has a chance, a much better chance with this than before. The big winners here, I think, are the Big Ten and the SEC and the Big 12, who I think could get multiple teams. Big 12 has really gotten good. I mean, it's really gotten good. Quality coaches in the league. I think Oklahoma is going to have, a lot of competition in that conference again this year. Iowa State's returning virtually everybody. And, if they had a rematch next year, or this coming year, similar to the one that they had last year, both those teams might get in. If Oklahoma were playing Iowa State again. But I think the American is a real beneficiary, because we've seen now over a handful of years, post Boise State, we've seen the American come up with quality teams in with a consistency. UCF has been consistent. Cincinnati has been pretty consistent. Memphis is almost there with its level of consistency. But then, out west, every now and then a team like a San Jose State comes off the woodwork and goes, they went 9-0 last year. Now they got buried in their bowl game because they lost some players to COVID and a few opted out. But this is a win-win for everybody. They took care of all the constituents with this move. I have high praise for all the commissioners involved. And I do believe that for those that are critical of it and say, well, we're not those games, those special games where you're just that regular season game where if Alabama loses to LSU, my God, it's over. Oh, and if LSU loses, my God, it's over. Okay, I'll give you that. We may lose one of those games, but for every one of those games we lose, I'll give you 5 games in mid-October all the way to the end of November and December that will matter more than they've ever mattered. Here's a classic example, Roger. I was doing in 2019 up against the Auburn-Alabama game, the Iron Bowl. We had Iowa and Wisconsin on the from the Big Ten. Spencer Tillman and I called the game opposite the Iron Bowl. That game did a 2.9 rating. Now that's just under 3 million viewers. That's pretty good up against the Iron Bowl that I think did maybe a 9 or a 10, something up like that. I mean, that's a huge number. But Iowa and Wisconsin were playing for what? They were playing for the division title for the right to be 3 touchdown underdogs against Ohio State.
Right.
Okay. That's what they were playing for. They were ranked, I think it was number 11 and number 15. So it was a top 15 game. They were really sound football teams with a great deal of Big Ten tradition. So they had a very loyal Big Ten audience. 2 schools, we're not talking about Ohio State here, and we're not talking about Michigan, but we're talking about that next tier of quality teams in the Big Ten, and they almost had 3 million viewers. Well, put that game now in a scenario where we're talking 12 teams in the college football playoff. Well, that game takes on so much more meaning, okay, than it otherwise would. So there'll be a lot more eyeballs tuning into everything. And that's my point of view. I want more eyeballs on more games. To me, the Alabama-Auburn game could and should be getting 13 to 14 million, not 10, 13 to 14. And the Iowa-Wisconsin game could get 5 or 6, not 3. And that's what we're looking to do with college football, is grow it. We're looking to grow the sport. We don't need to grow it necessarily in the SEC or in the Big Ten. We need to grow it west of the Red River, and we need to grow it east of Nashville. We got to get the Eastern Seaboard more in line with college football. They really don't care up there. The Northeast is pro country, but we could grow this thing if we have reasons for people to root for certain teams. Coastal Carolina, BYU. How many more people would have watched that game if they had known something was on the line?
Right.
Now, the game was great. Game day went, but in the end, we all knew it really didn't matter. It was there's your 15 minutes of fame, but see ya. Now that game is going to matter.
Certainly will. And we'll finish up on some Alabama talk. Big news in Tuscaloosa that Nick Saban has been extended through 2028. Of course, he could sign another extension coming up in 2025 and go into the 2030s and beyond. But what do you think that says about the long-term status of this program that continues bringing in these top recruiting classes? Just what do you see for the Crimson Tide first this fall and then moving forward with Coach Saban making it very clear that he's in for the long haul?
All right, I'm going to give you a scoop here, Raj. Are you ready? Tim Brando has been extended. I have. You're going to have to put up with me for a few more years on Fox, okay? You're the first one to get that news, Raj. That thing has been embargoed until I came on your show, all right?
We're honored. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it won't be until I'm 80 years old, though. I can tell you. It won't be. By the time I get to where Nick, I believe his contract is supposed to take him, I'll be playing the roles that Ray Bolger used to play on the Love Boat. All right. I'll be somewhere on a cruise ship between St. Thomas and Nassau. Okay. But listen, I give a lot of credit to Greg Byrne. Again, forward thinking. He'll be a conference commissioner one day. I feel pretty confident telling you that. He's really strong. He's one of the top 4 or 5 ADs in the country. Why not take advantage of this? Why not get out front of this and just eliminate the conversation with the transfer portal and everything going on in the wild, wild west of recruiting? Why not? Look, it was his idea. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, it was his idea. And Nick was like, all right, fine. Okay. And I don't see myself wanting to do anything else. And, because I'm in the situation that I am professionally, and we're talking on the eve of my going into the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, and I get this question asked a lot, Roger, how much longer you want to do this? That's happening to me now. And I just look at people when they ask me, and I'm like, well, that's almost like asking me, how long do I want to stay married? I love my wife, and I hope I stay married for, forever. I don't. Why would I want not to be married to my lovely wife? She's put up with me for 42 years. And by the way, her name's Terry too. All right. She's Miss Terry as well. Nick loves what he does. I love what I do. I dream about ball games I haven't called yet. Well, I'm sure he dreams about coaching games. I know he's not just dreaming. He's preparing for games he hasn't coached yet. So I think he doesn't see himself not wanting to do something that he loves. He truly loves. And he's really, from a legacy standpoint, he's past all that. I think there was a period there when we can all legitimately say, well, until he gets number 6 at Bama, and he can say he's got 7 because he had the 1 at LSU, then, maybe after that. Well, we're after that. And he still loves what he does and doesn't see himself doing anything less than what he's doing. And so I know I feel that way. And I'm, I think, 4 years younger than Nick. So I identify with it. I really do. In his job, it's more stressful and he's working more hours than I do. But I will tell you, it's a way of life. There was a time in my life when I was working around the calendar and holding down 3 or 4 gigs at one time with W-2s flying in from all over the place. Now I'm just doing really college football and basketball. And then I'm playing golf and chasing grandbabies. But until such time as I think he feels like he's maybe missing out on grandkids or missing out on some personal things that he could be doing or wants to do, why wouldn't he do this? And I think his family is, they're part of this. It's like a team. His wife, Terry, is dynamic and she enjoys it. I think she wants it as much for him as he wants it for himself. So I think it's a very wise choice, and I don't see any reason to believe that he's not going to do it until such time as he says, okay, I don't think I can pour into this what I've always done in the past. So I'm impressed, and I guess I shouldn't be surprised. There was a time when I thought he might, and we talked about it on my show. I did a one-on-one with him back in 2016, and I talked to him about being the czar of college football. I think that would be a wonderful job for him. I would love for him if the NCAA were totally out of the picture and the conferences took over college football, if the commissioners took it over and they needed someone to look out for the betterment of college football in total, all of it. I think Nick would be challenged by that. That might be something that he would consider, but that's not going to happen for the foreseeable future.
Well, in the foreseeable future, you've got a contract extension with Fox. We just learned that, and we've extended your time on this.
Breaking news for you, Roger.
We're going to take to Twitter immediately once we're done. But Tim, just thank you so much for all of your insights in this past little bit here with us on Crimson Drive, and have a great weekend getting inducted in the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. Congratulations from all of us here at the Capstone.
Thank you, man. Great to be with you. Congratulations on all of your accomplishments, and that Alabama women's softball team is incredible. That was some run they made.
Always a fun conversation with Tim Brando, again, from his home in Shreveport, Louisiana, dubbed as Chateau Brando. Certainly some great opinions on college football. Certainly a lot of thoughts on the 12-team playoff expansion that could be on the horizon, as well as really interesting comments at the end of that interview about Coach Saban and his long-term future here in Tuscaloosa. It's going to wrap up this edition of Crimson Drive, presented to you by Coca-Cola. One programming note, we will be back next week on Thursday at 2 o'clock for another live edition of Crimson Drive. But after that, we will be taking a bit of a 2-week summer break before we're back at it with SEC Media Days coverage coming up in July. But we will be back next week. Certainly hope you can join us here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network Facebook page at 2 p.m. Central for Crimson Drive, presented to you by Coca-Cola. Special thanks to our Facebook Live producer, Ethan Carabin. Thank you as well to the guests we've had on the show, Matt Reida, Alabama baseball assistant coach, as well as Fox Sports, Tim Brando. For everybody with the Crimson Tide Sports Network, this is Roger Hoover wishing you a great weekend, good afternoon, and roll Tide.